Hello, welcome back to my writing channel. My name is Josie, and we are just still plugging away at a rewrite of a murder mystery book I first wrote 5 years ago, and I just picked up again recently to see if I could bring it to my current day standard, having written a bunch more thrillers since then. It's been a really interesting process going through the old story, picking apart the gems, the things that I really like from that original fifth draft. I think I got to a fifth draft before I put it aside way back when, but really examining and thinking about the things that don't really work because this was the first time I wrote a thriller. And I think it's pretty common the first time you write a book to be a little bit rote, to be a little predictable, to take the things that you've read and try and recreate it a little bit less originally than you might a couple books in. A lot of times when I'm trying to brainstorm and outline and come up with like a hook or just what my next thriller is going to be, I kind of go back to tropes because tropes can be good because I think that they are consistent plot devices that people like, but tropes can also be a crutch if you're not using them in a new and interesting way. And so I think in the recent books I've written, I've really been able to take a trope and use it to its full advantage. I've been able to twist them in a way that keeps them interesting. But in that earliest draft, I picked a trope that at this point is a little bit overdone. So back then, I think there was a trend, and also I was just reading a lot of thrillers where the main character was an alcoholic, unreliable, saw something that nobody believes that they actually saw. So when I first started writing this thriller, I was pantsing, and that trope kind of became the backbone of the story. I don't think I even use it to its full advantage. So as I did some re-outlining, some replanning, I've really been able to play with the start of the story to really set up the hook to capitalize on that trope. But I've also been wanting to explore other ways that people have used this trope, other ways that I could push it. So I'm not just following this like well-trodden path, but I'm coming up with something a little bit unique. I'm using it in my own way. So I've started to read some thrillers that have been published more recently that play with the alcoholic woman unreliable narrator trope, partially as well because I'm not someone who has like firsthand experience on alcoholism. Like, I'm not someone who has drunk excessively over a long period of time. There's been periods in my life where I've, consumed more alcohol than others. And I wanted to see a few more examples of how to incorporate a character who is so dependent on drinking and how that would play out in a narrative without being like every other page, yeah, she took a shot of whatever. So I want it to be there, but I don't want it to distract from the plot. And I also really wanted to see what a published author would do in terms of threading in that unreliable narrator aspect of it. Because that's something I've been thinking about of like how to naturally filter in, like, what if the character remembers a scene that didn't actually happen, where a character who's unreliable, drunk, not really sure what's going on, thinks they observe something, but the narrative is still allowing the reader to understand that something else happened, or just different ways to play with that in the narrative. So I just finished reading The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, which has a narrator who is drunk, who sees things, and everyone says, like, you don't really know what you're talking about, like, leave it alone, that kind of a vibe. So really playing with that classic trope. And I didn't quite get exactly what I wanted from that because, mild spoilers, like, she doesn't really get anything wrong. Like, she's not really imagining things, and like, she's actually pretty reliable at the end of the day. So I'm going to keep expanding my reading to see if I can find something that really exemplifies what I'm trying to figure out, because I want to be able to implement that well in my own story. But because I've been reading in the last couple of days, I haven't been doing much writing, so I'm excited to get back into it. The next scene is kind of fun, where I'm playing with the character trying to remember something from one of those blank moments because of her drinking. So we'll see how it goes. I'm about to run out to the library to pick up two books that I have on hold, and both of those books have unreliable narrators. So I'm continuing my journey of trying to find examples written in books that I can use, because I know what I want, but yet I like don't have a vision for it. So I think until I see it, it won't like click for me exactly how I need to get it written in my own book. Originally, I was looking specifically for books with like an alcoholic main character, unreliable narrator, but I've actually read quite a few of those, and they're like older, like some of the Gillian Flynn books, The Girl on the Train, that kind of a thing. And I was just like not really interested in some of the more recent books. So I decided to go for unreliable narrators for other reasons, and just see, because it's like, it's not the alcoholism trope that I need to help try and figure out what it is I'm trying to do. It's how to use unreliable narrator, how to like have altered reality a little bit. And actually, in the meantime, I picked up a mystery book that I've been seeing everywhere and I really wanted to get in on it. And it's The God of the Woods. And I just finished it. And turns out that book also has a little bit of a unreliable narrator. There's like a bunch of different point of views here. So it's only one of the characters. And they're kind of alcoholic, but mostly just like medicated. And it's really interesting because I found that this book did a very similar reveal plot twist that the Riley Sager book I just read also did with the same kind of character. So I'm feeling a little bit of a trend going on in how to use that character. But I don't know, like I have something similar to it in my novel, but I actually twist it as it being a red herring and that not actually being the solution. So lots to think about, lots to think about. I have returned with many books, so I figured I'd share the ones that I thought might be helpful. The first one that I had on hold is Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. I haven't actually read anything by this author before, but I've heard a lot of great things. And this one is about a character who gets violently attacked on Halloween night. She suffers a head injury, and they think that within a week, the injury will trigger a deadly aneurysm. So, in those 7 days, as her condition deteriorates, she tries to figure out who tried to kill her and I guess is killing her because of this aneurysm. And then the second book that I had on hold was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And this one was about, I have to reread these because I literally forget the summaries almost immediately, and it's been like a week that I've been waiting for it. So it's about a popular podcaster who meets this other woman, and they seem to kind of grow some sort of friendship. And then the other person disappears, and then the podcaster, who's a true crime podcaster, then has to do their own investigation, and it's their own true crime that they have got to figure out. And then I picked up two books while I was at the library, one Alice Feeney book and one Lucy Foley book. I've read other books by these authors and I really like them. And they both just have a good deal of unreliable narrators. So I don't know much about either of these and I kind of want to leave it that way. And we'll see if either of them are helpful. But the one thing I'm kind of nervous about is I think both of these are likely to be multiple point of view books. I mean, these might also be multiple point of view. I don't really know. But there is a little bit of a difference between multiple point of view suspense versus single point of view, because I prefer to write single POV. I just like to be really immersed in one character and really try and like get the reader to root for them. But when you have multiple point of views, it's a lot easier to build vicarious suspense, right? Like characters will know something in one point of view that another character won't be privy to, so you as the reader get to know a lot more than the character that you're reading from. Because when it's like single point of view, it's a lot harder to make the reader understand truths about the story that the characters don't know without making the characters seem not as smart. So I'll have to see how much these multiple point of view books are able to help me. But one thing I have been thinking of, a way to kind of get around this a little bit, is I want my one point of view, but maybe I could use multiple timelines to my advantage. Like, I won't do like a full secondary timeline, but at least introducing flashbacks, because my main character has trouble remembering things. So I could insert flashbacks as memories that she's able to access, and then potentially also feeding in warped memories or memories that are incorrect of her trying to like fill in the gaps in her brain. Anyways, these are just thoughts I'm having, but I don't have any flashbacks currently in the story, though I have a couple of scenes already in my head that I'm like, yeah, I could do a flashback for those. But we're still in the brainstorming phase for it. I don't know if I'd insert them in this draft of the story, even if I try drafting a couple flashbacks. I just might not put them into the actual book yet until I have a better sense of, because you don't want to also shoehorn flashbacks in where they don't fit. Like, you want to make sure it's actually going to like elevate the storyline of like where it's being put in and bring in new stakes at that moment. So there's a little bit more nuance to it than just like slapping it in as a chapter between two previous chapters. I'm just sitting down to write. I actually haven't written for a couple of days now because I'm someone who just goes like all in on something. So if I read a book, it's like all I want to do until I finish it. So I was reading Not Quite Dead Yet, and I just finished it, which is why I'm now have the mental space and energy to start some writing. And I really liked it, but it didn't give me what I wanted in terms of like memory loss, unreliability, that kind of a thing. I feel like it's a trend in thrillers kind of across the board that the main character has to have some sort of secret that they're keeping from other characters that they're not thinking about, that they're keeping from the reader the whole time. And it's like a smaller one in this, but it's just something I've noted because I feel like a lot of the thrillers I've written, I don't know, I don't really hide anything from the like that the main character has done. I don't really hide it from the reader, but that could be something interesting to play with in the future. Another thing I was thinking about that I haven't used before that could be interesting, this one as well as I think the Riley Sager one, The House Across the Lake. Both of them also include a moment. Well, they look very different in both books, but there's like a moment or a scene or a clue that is given at some point in the story where it's like heavily implied that it's related to one character or one situation, but they don't actually use a name. They just use like pronouns or something. And then it's not till later that you realize it's not actually associated with the person it was like very clearly directed towards in that scene, and that it applies to someone else, and then there's a reveal. So I think that's also kind of interesting. There's no way to really use that or incorporate it into the thriller I'm currently writing, but I'm noting it for the future. I did really appreciate how well this book did at setting up the investigation. Like I felt like very naturally it led from like one investigation point to another, and there was never a feeling of just like, well, we hit a roadblock, there's nowhere left, and oh, deus ex machina, or like they come to this random conclusion that they wouldn't have to keep going. Like it very clearly feels like there's always another thing to be looking at, always like a natural next point of investigation, which was done really well. And that's also something I'm gonna have to work on in this book to really try and make it feel like as the main character is investigating the murder mystery in my story, that they're not jumping to any kind of like big conclusions, and I'm really leaving those breadcrumbs and making the character very much follow like what someone would naturally do if they were trying to do an investigation like this. Even though I want to jump to the next book and keep reading, because I've just been having such a fun time getting back into reading thrillers specifically, I don't want to do that because I know I'll just get like focused in and not give myself time to write. It would be great to like come to some sort of like balance of getting a little bit of writing and a little bit reading done every day. But I also know myself, so I may try to do that, but I'm not anticipating very much success. I finished reading these last three library books, the thrillers that I picked out to hopefully give me some clarity on my own story. And I think I did, but not in the way that I expected. So the first two that I read were these guys. So The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley and None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And they were both really interesting. I really enjoyed them for different reasons. And I took away stuff from them, that I can apply in the future with thrillers, but none of them was helping me with my specific issue of trying to create this like unreliable, messy main character, maybe partly due to alcoholism or just memory loss or things like that. And none of these books really did that. I mean, this one had a lot of different characters, different POVs. So there was an unreliability, and a lot of like that mystery just came from lots of different point of views. You didn't know really who was who from the past, from the present, that kind of a thing. I actually really wanted to read this book because of the title, because one of the thrillers I'd had in mind for writing in the future was a little bit like Lord of the Flies kind of feel, and I felt like The Midnight Feast kind of like fit in that kind of vibe of just like savage wilderness, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking in my head, but it definitely wasn't that, but it was still a good book for what it was. But in my head, I just like thought it would be something different, but I didn't even read the like cover. So anyways, that was on me. This one was so well done, even from the title, none of this is true. So the whole time you're like learning people's sides of this story, mostly this one character at the beginning. You're like, is any of this true? From the title, which I thought was super clever. But it was a little trippy to read because the main person that everyone's putting as like the villain or the unstable one is named Josie, which is my name. So every time it was brought up, I was just like, I don't know, I was feeling some type of way about it. But I love this, especially because I feel like the ending was left kind of ambiguous. After reading both these two books and not really feeling closer to, that trope that I was looking for, and part of that's my fault. I was just reading books that I kind of wanted to read without really looking to see. Because I also don't want to spoil myself for these things. I'm reading these books to try and like learn more and get more things from thrillers, but at the same time, like, I don't want to not enjoy the process of spoiling myself on a book's twist before I read it. Like, I want to still have fun. But then I got to this one. So I have really enjoyed a lot of Alice Feeney's books, and so I just picked this up because it was her name on it and she was on the shelf. It's actually about a writer whose wife disappears a year before, and he's struggling to write his next book. So his agent tells him that she has this cabin place on this small Scottish island that he can go to just seclude himself and write for a bit. But it's like an island of 25 residents and they don't really like outsiders, and things get weird. And he's also drinking this like hallucinogenic tea, as well as like maybe not kind of being an alcoholic, though denying it, though like he likes to drink in the evening. So you don't know what's real, what's not. So that's really what I was like hoping for. And seeing written on the page in this book the things that I want to try and pull off in mine wasn't quite the like how-to guide that I was expecting, because it's kind of interesting. Like in this book, he also has to make the decision of like that cabin that the agent like tells him he can go to was a cabin of another famous author who passed away, and actually his 10th and final novel that he wrote that never got published was hidden in this cabin, and he finds it, and he has to decide if he's going to take it and kind of pretend it's his own, his next book, because he can't think of, I guess, the next story to write. And that was really interesting for me because I don't know. I just feel like I would never steal someone else's book idea, because the story just like wouldn't feel like mine. Like you could rewrite it, but like the characters wouldn't feel like mine. Like that's why I've never been super into writing like fan fiction or anything like that, like using someone else's character, someone else's world. And so in the same vein, reading this author's way of creating that unstable main character, alcoholic or whatever other drugs he's taking, is not exactly how I want to do it in my own book either. And I think that, yeah, it's important to read and like see other examples, but the only way that I'm really going to be able to figure out how I want to do it in my own book is just to keep writing, see what works, try out different things, push it. And if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, or if I go back after, I'm like, yeah, it didn't really work, I can delete and restart. So it's kind of interesting seeing that parallel of like in the book, the idea of like stealing someone's book, but also the whole thesis of what I'm trying to do right now is see if I can steal the methods that other authors use in writing their thriller, unreliable narrator tropes, which was kind of funny to have that pop up in this story. But I will say, I think I need a little bit of a break before going into more psychological thrillers, because I'm just seeing so many patterns repeat themselves in these books. I don't want to spoil which ones they come from, but I've seen again the like putting a hint in or a clue or someone speaking where you think it's really one person that they're speaking to because of context and whatever, and it turns out it's not them. Or the main character is hiding a really big event or a really big secret that kind of shakes everything. And that second one I struggle a little bit with, because it's like the fairness of like, as the reader, it can be really fun to read, to be like, oh my goodness, I never would have guessed. How is this possible? This is crazy. It upends everything. But I always find those twists hard, because then in retrospect, like as you're thinking about the story, you're just like, wait, so how did they hide it from me in all these other times? Like these characters a lot of times do a lot of like internal monologue, internal thinking through of stuff. So the fact that it doesn't come up feels like a little cheapened, though I do like the twist when it comes up. But like that's one of the things where I'm like, I don't know if I'd ever pull it into my own story for that reason, unless I am giving pretty hefty clues and I'm assuming that the reader is going to catch on at some point. But with that being said, I did find the trope I was looking for. And instead of trying to find more books that fit that trope, I think the solution here is just to keep writing and keep trying to figure it out and write it my own way. Thank you for making it to the end of this video, hanging out with me, even though I did a lot more reading than writing than I was expecting in the last little while. And here's to more of both.